Welcome to another episode of the Transfer Portal CFB podcast presented by No Context College Football. I'm your host, Dylan. We have a great show for you tonight. It's going to be the Week 4 preview show. I'm here with Liam and Andrew. Liam, how you doing? It's finally a time for you to not be hosting a show.
Yeah, I'm doing good. I don't have to talk so much this week, I guess. I'm still feeling the downs of losing to Big Brother Fresno State once again. That's never fun, getting absolutely bullied by them every year, it seems. But other than that, doing good. More fun football ahead of us.
For everybody else, that was a lot of fun to watch. I'm a huge Jake Haener guy. I watched Fresno State ahead of that Oregon game, and I was enjoying it, but I thought of you too. So I'm sorry you're still reeling from that. But Andrew, how you doing, man? It's great to see you.
I heard there's a pretty big football going on. Sorry, not a pretty big football. We're talking about huge footballs here. There's a pretty big football game going on this Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, Soldier Field. Wisconsin plays Notre Dame, and truthfully, I cannot wait no longer. I just want these next 2 work days over with. Just want to wake up on Saturday, cook up a good Wisconsin-style omelet. For those that don't know what a Wisconsin-style omelet is, summer sausage, bacon, extra cheese, perfectly done, and just get ready to watch that game already.
Sounds like a lot of fun, and we're joined today by our special guest picker, Shehan Jeyarajah. Shehan, it's great to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited for that game too. As a Chicago Bears fan, I know it's going to really be a great tribute to the offenses that Chicago has put forward the past forever. That
was an unpopular little tidbit there about you. There's 2 Packers fans in here, so we'll
well, how can you be mad at me about that? I mean, you guys have owned us for this long, okay? I don't feel like you're allowed to be mad at that point.
That's fair. But the heat's still there. But we're here to talk college football, so
fair enough.
We'll set that aside. But yeah, so just let people know who you are, what kind of what got you into college football, and kind of what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a national college football writer over at CBS Sports now. I actually just joined a couple weeks ago, so still very new to the role, but it's been a lot of fun. So my background, I actually didn't grow up a huge college football fan, but when I got to college, I went to Baylor University at a good time and got out right in time as well, I'll mention. But it was a lot of fun. I just loved going to the games. I love the culture of it. My second year there, I started reporting on it as well, back when they were winning Big 12 championships, and I just love, again, the culture of it. I love the camaraderie of it. I love the storylines of it. I think the passion of, obviously, the fan bases is just completely different than anything else you see in pro sports. And I grew up a big NBA fan. That was kind of my sport growing up. But college football is just so different in so many ways, in a good way. And so I fell in love with it, decided to do this full time, and it's kind of taken off since then.
Well, congratulations on the role. That's awesome that you got into it and that you're here and, you're so deep into it. And you're definitely one of the more knowledgeable guys out there. So congrats on that.
I appreciate that.
So to start off, this past weekend, we talked about it in the last podcast, but a couple of the top teams didn't look so hot. The Clemson, Oklahoma, Ohio State. Ohio State, the score looks a little bit better than what you actually saw on the field. But we wanted to kind of start with a little roundtable, just talk about who had the more concerning start through the non-conference schedule, Clemson, Oklahoma, or Ohio State. Shehan, since you're our guest, we'll start with you.
Yeah, to me, it's definitely Clemson. And the reason that I say that is I look at Ohio State, I look at what they have on that defense. I feel like they have the pieces to figure it out. I feel like maybe they can make some schematic shifts. Maybe they can just try to make the game a little easier. That's one thing that we saw when Jeff Hafley took over as defensive coordinator a couple years ago before he left for Boston College, was that he made the game easy. He didn't overcall it. He didn't try to get people to do too much. And when you have talent like Ohio State has on that defense, you can kind of just let them go, right? And maybe there's something, that's possible in that kind of way for Ohio State. Oklahoma, I feel like they're playing conservative, especially at running back, because they only have 2 scholarship running backs. So I feel like they're calling the game a certain way because of that. And I do think that when they play some of these better opponents, they're going to let Kennedy Brooks and Eric Gray go. But Clemson, the reason I'm concerned about Clemson is that I don't know if the answers are on the roster. I mean, we heard from Dabo Swinney that, Georgia Tech lined up in some different kind of front that they weren't used to. Well, Clemson should be good enough that it doesn't matter what kind of front anybody's running, right? You should just be able to run forward and that be enough. And we really haven't seen that to this point. I think that the receivers are struggling to gain separation. It's, we talk a lot about Trevor Lawrence going, but I think that Travis Etienne leaving as both a blocker, a runner, and also as a pass catcher, I think that's really been felt. And, maybe Will Shipley is the answer there, but it's going to take some time. So I'm worried that they don't have the pieces to be able to rebuild that interior offensive line before the end of the season. And on top of that, with their schedule, with potentially not having a ranked game on their schedule, if North Carolina loses somewhere, I don't know if they're going to be able to play their way back into it. So for me, it's Clemson, but all three, I did not expect any of this to be quite honest when the season started.
Yeah, I remember mentioning, I think it was in our Power 5 preview podcast, I talked about Clemson's offensive line as a big area of concern, losing some starters, still having some solid starters as well. That defensive line I thought was going to be a little bit better. I don't know if we've seen quite the same production. Now, of course, you're talking about, that Georgia game. That's a tough offensive line to go up against. But, that Georgia game kind of surprised some people. And then the Georgia Tech game, we haven't seen anything like that from Clemson in a long time. Liam, how do you feel? Do you think Clemson has the most concerning start as well, or where do you go?
Yeah, I also think Clemson has the most concerning start out of these three. I'm not that worried about Oklahoma. My concerns with Rattler are still there because there's still mistakes that he's made for over a year now that he hasn't fixed. We just need to see him mature more as a quarterback and fix those things. Ohio State, the offense is still loaded. Stroud will settle in eventually. I hate that we're so focused in on and taking away every single little facet of this kid's game, and he's just in his first few games. Like, let it take some time. Trees don't grow that quick. Like, just please let the kid grow. I know there's other quarterback talent there and people want to see that, but Ohio State fans are just they're not giving him a chance. I can't even think of the word right now, but what I'm saying. With Clemson, though, there's a legit concern because the offenses look like it's abysmal. They scored 3 points against Georgia, which sure is a defensive game. It was a slugfest defensively, really good defense played both ways, but you scored 3 points and you follow that up with 49 against South Carolina State. Whoop-de-doo, good for you. You go out there and you score 14 against Georgia Tech. You win 14-8 against Georgia Tech at home. That's inexcusable from a team that has playoff and championship aspirations. They got completely bailed out of that awful shovel pass call on 4th and goal. I don't know what that garbage is. And Georgia Tech needs to use Jahmyr Gibbs more, but that's another story. I don't know with Clemson. We've spoken to it a few times now. The receivers unable to separate is really shocking, and it's strange and it's weird. The offensive line is just not dominant in the slightest. They are getting bullied in the trenches, essentially. DJ is not set up for success. The quarterback at Clemson isn't set up for success with the talent surrounding him. Like, how weird is that? That's bizarre. The play calling's been poor. Everything about Clemson hasn't been good, and they're so lucky they play in the ACC. They're so lucky. At Boston College, Doug and I have spoke them up all off season, and then Yurkovich goes down, and it's like it really could have been BC's dream season, and instead, Dabo will work his magic, and Clemson will. They'll do what they always do. They'll win the ACC. They'll probably make the playoff and. Another season, right? Can't we just have 2007 2.0 already?
That was very, very passionate. I'm glad that we got some Liam energy there. Andrew, how do you feel? I think you're muted, Andrew.
Yeah, for some reason it wasn't letting me do my shortcut, but that's beside the point. So yeah, go ahead and just make it 3 for 3 for Clemson. I think whenever I look at like Oklahoma and I look at Ohio State, I can at least see silver linings. There's still enough talent on that Oklahoma offense for Spencer Rattler to rely on. And it's kind of like maybe not a similar thing as CJ Stroud, but like we're still early in the season. I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to hit the panic mode yet. We're not in Big 12 conference yet for them. They will be soon though. Nebraska is not part of the Big 12. Used to be 50-year anniversary. So kind of like back to what I was going with, like Ohio State was. I think Ohio State fans are going insane. They're saying that Stroud is not good enough, and I think that's just freaking ridiculous. They're saying like, how are we going to count on him whenever it comes to like conference games, like in the big games? I'm like, dude, he literally had 484 yards against Oregon. Okay, like that loss was not his fault. Okay, like I'm pretty sure if you put Quinn Ewers in or any of the other 5-star quarterbacks that they have in the room, you probably would have had the same, or no, you'd probably have the worst result, in my honest opinion, on that. So Ohio State, just calm down. We know how Ohio State's going to be. They're the second half kings of everything. They're second half kings of games. They're in the second half kings of the regular season. It's just how they are. Clemson, though, guys, I read a stat like on college football final Sunday morning, and I didn't even know about this. I didn't know this, and I wouldn't have known this if I didn't watch that show. Clemson is last in the ACC in yards per play. They have the least explosive offense in the ACC right now. Think about it. They're worse than Florida State. And we make fun of Florida State for what they did against Jacksonville State, for how horrible they looked against Wake Forest. I mean, guys, this is really bad on Clemson's part. They're like bottom 5 offense in the country in terms of yards per play. Lynn Dixon, he was essentially Travis Etienne's backup for the last 2 years. He just announced that he's going to be in the transfer portal. So we'll see. So clearly he doesn't even feel comfortable there in Clemson right now. I just do not see anything for Clemson. Like we said, we're talking about the schedule. I don't think they're going to have the credentials to make the playoff without a single ranked win. And as far as I'm concerned, Liam knows that I'm a betting guy. So when Clemson plays NC State this weekend, NC State's the 10-point underdog, hit that NC State plus 10. Go for it. Just want to hit that free bet of the week.
The one stat that I read this week that absolutely blew my mind is that Clemson, yards per game wise, they have fewer yards per game than South Florida, than Georgia Southern, and Arizona. I mean, that absolutely boggles my mind. I was going to put a graphic up about that today, but I got a little busy preparing for the pod today. But the next thing we wanted to talk about before we get into the games is kind of who we're focusing on player-wise. Who is one player that we want to see either match up against a certain team or we just think is going to have a breakout game. Liam, I'm imagining you're probably going to go with a group of 5 guy, but we'll see. Liam, who's your pick?
Bold of you to assume that I am going with the group of 5 guy. We just interviewed Bailey Zappi the other day, and he spoke so highly of Jarrett Stearns, wide receiver at Western Kentucky, Houston Baptist transfer. This kid is special. 5'9" receiver, has performed so well in these first 2 games. He has a huge opportunity this Saturday playing Indiana. Next week has Michigan State. In 2 weeks or whatever has UTSA. Huge 3-game stretch coming up here for him. NFL evaluators need to be watching, see what they could find in Stearns and see if he's a legit NFL guy. I think he is. This Western offense is explosive with Zach Kidley at OC, just an offensive mastermind. In his first 2 games, Stearns caught 16 passes for 278 and a few touchdowns. He had a 70-plus yard touchdown as well. He's so dang good. And speaking with Bailey, he has spoke to how high his knowledge and understanding of the game is, and that he and Stearns just have such an understanding of each other. The connection they have is special, as he called it. Like, is just a gifted receiver in every facet of the game. So Jarrett Stearns, looking forward to watching him torch Indiana this week. Huge opportunity for him against Tywan Mullen.
You've got Western Kentucky winning that one, don't you?
Of course I do. I had Indiana starting like 1-4, 1-5. I got to keep rolling with it.
Shehan, who's your pick?
Yeah, listen, I do have to say, I am the original Bailey Zappi truther. I covered him when he was at Houston Baptist. I unironically did come prepared with Bailey Zappi as my answer for this exercise. So here's the deal, right? Like, I mean, he's a great player. And the other thing too, is that and I'm sure you guys have talked about this on the podcast, but like, they brought their entire offense. You mentioned they brought Jarrett Stearns. They brought Ben Ratzlaff, who was another one of their top receivers. And they actually brought Jarrett Stearns' brother, Josh Stearns, as well from that Houston Baptist team, along with the offensive coordinator. So this is an offense that was basically transplanted from Houston Baptist when it was one of the most productive offenses in college football. And just kind of got an infusion of actual FBS talent over at Western Kentucky. So it's no surprise to me that he's had this hot of a start. So since you already named a Western Kentucky guy, I'll go in a different direction. I'm going to go with Eric Ezukama, the receiver at Texas Tech. So they're playing against Texas this weekend. This could be one of the last games that we're going to see, if not the last game that we're going to see by Texas Tech in the city of Austin, with Texas moving to the SEC. There's obviously reports right now that maybe they might play heading forward. I'm going to not worry about that right this second. Eric Ezukama through the first 3 games has been really, really good. He's over 330 receiving yards through 3 games. And he even had a down game last week against FIU where they kind of wanted to get other guys involved. But in the first 2 games, over 300 yards receiving, had a receiving touchdown. He's really become a safety blanket for quarterback Tyler Shuck. And we've seen with Texas Tech, they've been a team that's really been a tale of 2 halves. In the first halves of games, they've really struggled. They've gone down against all 3 opponents that they faced off against. And in the second half, I believe that the number is that they're outscoring opponents 71-16. So if that team shows up in the first half, I think that Texas Tech has the ability to beat Texas, right? I don't think that Texas is especially good on the lines. I think we saw that in the Arkansas game. And Texas Tech isn't going to bowl them over, but I think that at least keeps the matchup a little closer if this Texas defensive line isn't going to be quite what we expected. So I think that for Texas Tech to win, Eric Ezukama needs to be a real focus, not just in terms of receiving yards, but also in terms of taking pressure off of the other receivers as well.
That's a great pick. I've been keeping tabs on Texas Tech this year because, my guy Tyler Shuck is the quarterback there now.
Of course.
Which Western Kentucky guy are you going with? Or are you going with a different team?
I'm not going to go with a Western Kentucky guy, but I am going to go with a guy who plays quarterback at a university who wear red colors and start with the letter W, and that is Graham Mertz at Wisconsin. I know it's a little simple for me to say that, but guys, Graham Mertz, he's feeling a lot of pressure in Madison right now. There are a lot of people in Madison calling for his job to be stripped away right now and go for Nick Vanden Boom, all-American college football name right there. Guys, Graham Mertz is losing trust with the Wisconsin fans, the Wisconsin alumni, and it's absolutely ridiculous. He had an absolute horrible game against Penn State, 2 fumbles in the red zone on handoffs, mind you, and they went 1 for 4 in the red zone scoring against Penn State. And guys, I've said about this in a previous pod, people were out here saying, like, if you put any other Wisconsin quarterback, we know how much they've struggled with the quarterbacks over the last 12 years. If you put any of them in that same position that he was in, they probably win the game against Penn State. And sadly enough, I somewhat agreed with him. Now, I'm really, really trying to give Graham Mertz benefit of the doubt. This is your first game in front of a full Camp Randall Stadium. This is a noon game against a really tough Penn State defense. He goes out against Eastern Michigan. I feel like Paul Chryst was trying to control his tempo a little bit. I mean, he didn't even break 150 yards. He didn't get a touchdown. He didn't get an interception. But I think he's just trying to keep him relaxed for this upcoming game against Notre Dame. And guys, Jack Plummer was off to a blazing start to the first 2 games of the season. Notre Dame's defense, they just come into Notre Dame Stadium and they essentially shut him down. He only threw 180 yards. So I'd like to know, how is Graham Mertz going to react to this kind of Notre Dame defense? Because, guys, once you get pressure on Graham Mertz, he's going to make a mistake. Now, it's just a matter of limiting those mistakes for him. And, I'm not worried about Wisconsin's running back. Shez Malusi, Jalen Berger, and Isaac Barrendo, for me, a top 20 at worst running back trio in the nation. And the only reason why I think it's top 20 and not higher is because we have the very small sample size in 2 games. I want to see how Graham Mertz is going to attack this Notre Dame defense, and how is Kyle Hamilton. He was my defense player of the week this past week. He was so aggressive against Purdue. I could tell that I want to know how Paul Chryst and Joe Rudolph, head coach, offensive coordinator at Wisconsin, to handle Graham Mertz. Is he going to let him throw it far, or is he only going to use slant patterns and essentially running backs, and that's it? So we'll see how it goes. I do think they're going to be more aggressive with Graham this week, and if it doesn't, it's going to be real panic button.
Yeah, definitely. That Wisconsin Notre Dame game is going to be huge. I'm a Pac-12 guy. I could easily go with a West Coast player, but I'm going to go with Treylon Burks from Arkansas, an SEC guy. That Texas A&M Arkansas game, we kind of alluded to it a little bit, but Texas A&M has the best passing defense in the country. Now, granted, They went up against New Mexico and Colorado. Those passing offenses have been abysmal so far. But still, they've shown that they can really cover anybody. I mean, Jalen Jones and Miles Jones are two lockdown corners. I think Traylon Burks is one of the best receivers in the country, but he's really going to have to prove that. And Arkansas has been, not really a pass-heavy team. Burks only has 13 catches through the first, I believe, 3 games. So A&M might go heavy against the run, which might open up Burks a little bit down the field. So I'm really looking for Traylon Burks to have a big game to show out to NFL guys that he can ball out against some of the best of the best. And the next little fun subject we want to get into is the trophy game. We have SMU TCU as one this week that we're going to be talking about a little bit later. But we want to go around and talk about our favorite trophy game, not just the trophy, but the game as well. Shehan, let's start with you.
And I just wanted to make sure the rules here. This is just any trophy game across the season, right? Not one that's just happening this weekend, right?
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. To me, my favorite trophy game, I'm a big proponent of the Egg Bowl. And for that, the reason why that is, okay, you have to go back to 2019, of course, when Elijah Moore does the fake P thing, right? Like, it's such a big deal that it eventually does lead to coaches' careers being changed, right? Like, that's how much focus is put on this game. The way that I've had it described to me by a big Mississippi State fan is that if you're one of these other teams, right? If it's Alabama, Auburn, yeah, there's major implications, all this sort of stuff, but it's like, okay, do we go to the playoff or do we go to the Sugar Bowl or do we, like, everybody still gets something at the end of it, right? Like, everybody's still good. The thing with Ole Miss versus Mississippi State is that, one, a lot of the time this is straight up for bowl eligibility, right? So like there's already just stakes from a football perspective. But the other side of it is, it does not matter what happens the rest of the year. If you lose the Egg Bowl, you have to live with that for 364 more days, right? Like, that's all that matters. It does not matter what happens outside of that game. That's the only game that matters. I think that there are legitimately people who would rather go 1-11 and beat the other team and don't really care about the rest of it. The rest of it's just an exercise preparing for the Egg Bowl. So because of that, it's one of the hatinous rivalries in America. I mean, I just, because again, you look at so many of the other ones, they're good teams. They're teams that are fighting for something else. They want to win the conference. They want to win the national title. This is it, right? This is the only thing that these two teams are fighting for. So for me, that's why the Egg Bowl kind of is one of the more special rivalries in college football.
That's definitely a fun one. Andrew, let's go to you. I know Wisconsin's got a couple of them. Are you going with one of those, or are you going different here?
I told myself that I wasn't going to seem too biased on this pick, but I just love the battle for Paul Bunyan's axe just so much. I love everything about it. I love the fact that we whip Minnesota every year, essentially since 2003. I love the fact that we haven't lost in Minnesota since I probably wasn't even in pre-K yet. I just love everything about it. I love the fact that they just take the axe, they take it, and it looks like they're chopping down the goalposts. I love the fact that this is essentially a Minnesota Super Bowl every year. And even when Wisconsin struggles, it's still a huge game for them. I remember last year, we had to beat Minnesota in order to become bowl eligible. Think about that for a second. And it relied on this game against Minnesota. And everybody, and it seemed like all the Wisconsin fans on Twitter that still try to keep some optimism after last year's abysmal year, or during last year's abysmal year, was just do not lose the axe. We do not want the axe over the Mississippi River. We do not want it in Minneapolis. We want it here in Madison. And another reason why I love this game is not just because of the axe itself. It's because of what the trophy was before the axe. Back in the 50s and like 40s, we had the slab of bacon, which literally was just a piece of wood with the letter M, and if you turn it the other way, it looked like W. And the story behind it is like spectacular. Wisconsin beat Minnesota back in like 1952, I believe it was. Wisconsin fans rushed the field, and all of a sudden, the slab of bacon is lost. 40 years it's missing, and then Barry Alvarez, or an intern, was cleaning up a shed in 1994, I believe it was, and they found the actual trophy in a shed in Wisconsin. So it's like, how the hell did it get it from Minneapolis over to Madison and nobody even noticed? So yeah, I love Paul Bunyan's axe. In fact, I just do not think it gets enough credit either. The term of the hype that goes into it, the fact that the fans are always into it. Even if both fan bases are having miserable seasons, this is still considered our Super Bowl for the season. We just want to keep the axe. I love the axe. I've even thought about going to is a woodsmith a word? Basically anybody that works with wood. I've been wanting to get someone to make like a replica because I just love the game every single year, except 2018. That season doesn't count.
Liam, let's hear it from you.
Well, we were on the same page with Western Kentucky with Zappy and Stearns. Shehan, I'm rolling with you here. I went with the Egg Bowl for my favorite trophy game. Just echoing everything you said. All this hatred, all that's built up for 364 days a year, and they're fighting for an egg. A golden egg. It perfectly encapsulates what college football is: the goofiness, the randomness, the just absurdity of this beautiful sport that we all love. And that's why I love this game. It's played like on Thanksgiving almost every year, Thanksgiving weekend guaranteed. But being able to watch this game growing up and seeing all these hectic moments, and being with family that doesn't want to watch college football, they want to watch NFL. Being able to put this Egg Bowl on and like show them like this sport's way better. Like Elijah Moore just old piss just happened, and you want to watch the NFL instead of one of the most iconic sports in this rivalry, iconic moments in this rivalry's history. The Egg Bowl is perfection, and it's really just what college football is. I just love it. It's been played every year since 1944. It dates back to 1901. The hatred runs so deep. How can you not love the Egg Bowl?
Do you guys know the origin of the egg trophy, the golden egg trophy? It was a prop from the Willy Wonka movie of the 70s. Okay, no, that's bullshit. I'm just kidding. I just
can't throw stuff like that out there.
I just think of golden egg, and I'm like, yeah, it's from the Willy Wonka movie.
All right. Well, Andrew's on a mood tonight, so we'll have to see what comes of that. But I don't want to repeat what everybody said. I love the Egg Bowl too. It's a fantastic matchup. Usually, I mean, a lot of years, this might be a good year for both teams, but usually, yeah, they're not that great, and especially recently. But there's just awesome moments that you really don't see in other rivalries. But one, and I know Liam does as well, one that I always find myself watching is UCLA and USC. No matter how good or bad both teams are, that rivalry feels really real and vicious, and there's always something on the line. It kind of feels like that's one of those that sometimes bowl eligibility is on the line, or the Rose Bowl maybe this year could be on the line. So those games are always exciting. But I think in terms of the name and the fact that they're not conference opponents, and we'll see it this weekend, is SMU and TCU with the Iron Skillet. I'd love the Iron Skillet. That's an underrated one. That trophy is just awesome. And I think both teams this year are going to put on a show. And speaking of the games that we've got, Andrew's talked about it a bit already, but we want to start off with our 10 games that we're picking on the transfer portal. Shehan will be our guest picker. So we'll kind of lead in with some of our storylines for the game, what we're looking for, and our pick as well. We'll try to make it a little bit quicker than we usually do. But we're going to start off with Notre Dame, Wisconsin. Andrew's the Wisconsin guy. Let's start with you. What's your pick, and what are you looking for?
It's gonna be a horrible game. Okay, I don't mean horrible is in terms of like, oh, the quality's gonna be bad, but I think this is gonna be a very defensive game. I don't think this is Jack Cohn's homecoming, by the way. Forgot to mention that this whole time. Jack Cohn gets to play against the defense that he used to prep for during the week every day essentially. This is gonna be a fun game. I don't think Jack Cohn's gonna have the success that he's had so far up to this point. I think Jack Sanborn, to me, he's one of the most underrated defensive players in the country. I think he's gonna be able to get a lot of pressure on Jack. And like I already said, Graham, just do not turn the ball over. Just don't make the throws that are not there. Just keep it short. Danny Davis and Kendrick Bryant, they're great slant receivers. Just try to keep it in front of them, and you should be fine. You should be able to move the ball. At this point, that's all it is. It's just about protecting the ball for Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin's going to win this game because I do not believe what I saw from Notre Dame at what they displayed against Toledo, and that squeak out against Florida State is looking very less and less impressive. Wisconsin wins super low. If you're a betting man, take the under. I think Wisconsin's going to win this game only like 14-13, 14-10.
Liam, do you think it'll be that low scoring too? And who's your pick?
I thought I had a low scoring game. I guess Wisconsin winning 23-20 is not as low scoring as I thought. defensive slugfest here, sloppy offenses. Playing in the NFL stadium is a great opportunity for everyone. When you get to play on the same field that Tulane legend Darnell Mooney plays on, you've got to cherish these moments. I think Caesar Williams of Wisconsin, I think he's going to step up, make a big play. I like what I've seen from Malusi. I like his running style a lot. Notre Dame's just whatever to me. I think they go and beat Cincy next week, but I mean, I'll talk about that next week. So I'm just going with Wisconsin. I still expect Michael Mayer and Kyle Hamilton to show out and have monster games, but I don't know. I just think it's going to be a weird, low-scoring game. Wisconsin, maybe a field goal or two late to tie and take the lead and walk out there with the win, rolling with the Badgers.
Shehan, do you think a Wisconsin team gets the win in Chicago?
It would have to be a first time, right? I've never ever seen that happen, and I've never seen terrible quarterback play at a Bears game ever. So, all that said, I've been pretty impressed, I've got to say, with Jack Cohn so far this year. I thought that he was going to be really the problem in a lot of ways for them, but just what they've done offensively, I think, has been pretty impressive. But I also have Wisconsin winning this game. Notre Dame's played with so much fire through 3 weeks, right? I mean, this is 3 straight games. I know that Purdue ended up being a 2-score game, but anybody who watched knows that that was a 1-score game in the fourth quarter. And if Purdue's quarterback doesn't go out, maybe they win the football game, right? And so I think that Wisconsin's going to be the first team that's really going to be able to take care of that. I do expect Graham Mertz to have a good game. I mean, this Notre Dame defense has been very inconsistent, which, again, not something I expected to happen. I did not expect that to be the conversation when we entered the year, but I do think it's probably going to be a very slow-paced game. I think that it's probably going to be an ugly game. I think there's going to be a lot of field goals, and so I'm going to go with something like 23-19 because that's just so many dang field goals.
I feel like this game is going to feel a lot like the Penn State-Wisconsin game. I do think the offenses will probably find a little bit more of a rhythm because that one there was just no offense to be seen. But I think the one thing that I really want to see is Kyron Williams. I don't think he's gotten off to quite the start that a lot of people kind of expected, especially me. I was very high on him coming into this year. But the one thing that I'm really interested is that he's such, they use him a lot in the pass game. He has more receiving yards than any running back not named Calvin Turner, which Calvin Turner's not really a running back. He's kind of a do-it-all guy. He can touch the ball from anywhere. But Kyron Williams has, a lot of versatility, and I think he could be kind of the difference maker for Notre Dame. But Wisconsin at the same time, they have the best rushing defense in the country. Andrew knows a lot about that. They've only given up 66 rushing yards through the first 2 games, which is incredible. I do think Notre Dame's offense struggles to get going against Wisconsin, and I think Graham Mertz gets going. I'm going with Wisconsin as well. And we're going with an interesting SEC game for our second one to go with here. LSU against Mississippi State. Now, LSU, I thought was one of the more overrated teams. I think they've kind of picked it up the last couple weeks. The defense looks a little bit better. Shehan, who's your pick here? Are you going with Cowbells or are you going with the Tigers?
Yeah, I mean, so everybody remembers how this game went last year, right? When KJ Costello goes and throws for, what was it, like 600 yards or something like that against this LSU defense, because Bo Pelini didn't know that you're allowed to play zone defense. So, they've hopefully figured out some of those issues. I just don't think that LSU is going to overlook Mississippi State for that reason. I know that Mississippi State has played pretty well so far this season, but I mean, it's funny, right? They're kind of a defensive-minded team right now who's still trying to figure out some things on the offensive end. I don't think that you can get away with being one-dimensional against a team like LSU just from a talent perspective. I think it just makes things too easy for their pass rushers and the guys that they have on the edge. And again, I think that they're going to understand that they can't play man defense against the air raid, against the purest of the air raid, right? So I do think they're going to be ready from that perspective. On the other side of the ball, I'm still probably a little iffy on whether I think that Max Johnson's any good, but I do think that they have weapons out there. So I think that, again, same deal. It's going to be a very low-scoring game, I think, which is funny because it's a Mike Leach versus, this LSU team that had such a great offense back in 2019. But I do think it's probably going to end up being a low-scoring game. I'm going to go with something like 24-21 LSU.
Andrew, how about you?
All right, sorry guys. Mike is once again acting stupid. So I'm a huge Will Rogers believer. He had his best game of the year last week against Memphis, despite a loss. Which I'm sorry, Memphis State got not Memphis State, Mississippi State got screwed. I think is there even a Memphis State in the FCS? But that's not important.
Memphis State actually
Memphis.
used to be Memphis.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
wow,
what it used to be called. Now it's called the University of Memphis.
Yeah, their throwback
wow.
jerseys and basketball are sick.
Shout out to Penny Hardaway.
Facts.
Love it. I absolutely love the history lesson. I'm always here for history lessons. So back to Mississippi State. I think they got screwed over against Memphis last week. He was down. All right. So I like I said, I like Will Rogers. I still do not trust this LSU defense. Like guys, they played They played McNeese State, and who they played last week? I forgot. But okay, Central Michigan. Yippee, Central Michigan. You finally got an FBS team on your schedule right there. I think
An
Will Rogers
SEC coach, may we mention Jim McElwain? Come on, have some respect.
Jim McElwain. Let's not get started with that dolphin picture that you had on the boat. Oh my goodness. So besides that, I just think Will Rogers is going to be too much for LSU's defense. I'm not sold on LSU's defense. I saw that against UCLA the first week of the season. Yeah, I'm gonna say Mississippi State, maybe around that 27-20 mark. I'm not on the Max Johnson train yet. I don't think I ever will be. So yeah, Mississippi State 27-20.
Liam, are you going to split the tie here?
Well, first off, I just gotta say, Andrew, yeah, we did teach you a history lesson, but you did tell us about that egg bowl from Willy Wonka. So thank you for that. I went LSU here. I went for a higher scoring game, kind of. I went 37-30. Mississippi State did dirty last week. There's no doubt about that. And there isn't really anything else to say about that. And in a perfect world, they come back and avenge that loss. Go Tigers. We don't live in a perfect world, fellas. We all know that. So I'm going to LSU. Kayshon Boutte, the best receiver in the country that doesn't play for the Buckeyes. He has been so good this year, and he just continues to show it. An absurdly good route runner. He has a breakout age somewhere in the early 18s because he broke out so early when he was like a young 18-year-old. That's crazy. But yeah, I just love Boutte. After the catch, he's special. His ability to break off plays after a catch is out of this world good. So I'm just going with LSU. I think Stingley has an interception in this game. I think Ricks plays good defensively as well. So I'll just go LSU. Sorry, Mississippi State.
And Deion Smith is another receiver that kind of broke out last week, had a 100-yard game. I think if Boutte gets taken away, which I don't expect he will, but I feel like Deion Smith could be kind of that number 2 guy in the mix there. LSU's defense, I feel like on paper, it seems better. They're 34th in the country in total yards after being, I think, top 3 worst. Top 3 worst is kind of a weird way to put that, but they were one of the worst in the country last year in basically every category. I think this is actually going to be an air raid shootout. I feel like both quarterbacks are going to kind of put up some yards, but I do think Mississippi State will outlast LSU. I think Mississippi State's defense will make Max Johnson uncomfortable. I think the Cowboys will too. Not that, I feel like that's kind of a given, but I'm going Mississippi State. Our next game is going to be Missouri against Boston College. Missouri, is a solid team. I think they've had kind of an underrated start. Liam, let's start with you. I know you're high on Boston College. Are you going with them here?
Well, I'm just sad, really, really, really sad because no more Yurkovich, and just brutal. I can't believe he's out for the year. I'm taking BC despite the fact that they've lost Phil the Thrill. I'm going BC 31-27 in a closer game. Dennis Grossell has some massive, massive shoes to fill, and he's dealing with extremely high expectations because this was a team that I saw as a 9-10 win team, and with how the ACC started off, could have been more than that, could have been their true dream season. But having Zay Flowers at receiver just makes a quarterback so comfortable. Zay is an incredible receiver. NFL team, whichever NFL team gets him is going to be thrilled to have him. Yeah, I think Jaden Woodby too is another player that should get more NFL love. He had a rough go at Florida State, as I spoke upon before, but he's back playing safety. He's making an impact. I believe he already has an interception this season, so good for him. Glad he's on his comeback tour. And Zion Johnson and Alec Lidstrom on the offensive line, two more NFL players on this team. Real good offensive linemen. I'm just going BC. I think they're just more talented, and I think that they're going to continue the strong season despite losing Phil the Thrill.
Shehan, looked like you were having some audio problems. Can you hear okay? And who's your
Yes,
pick? Missouri.
I got you. Yeah, I think that I like what I've seen so far from Missouri's offense. I know that they haven't been a perfect team, but I think that their running back, Tyler Batty, I think he's been really, really good so far this season. Nobody's really been able to stop him. And I do like what I've seen from Connor Bazelak, right? I mean, it's early. They still haven't played a lot of great competition, but I do think that he's been pretty efficient. I think he's executed very well. And, one thing that about Eli Drinkwitz coming from that App State system, right, is that they have very unique ways of running the football. I don't think that they're going to be ways that Boston College is necessarily prepared for. Now, I am definitely curious to see what this team looks like without Jurkovec in the lineup. I mean, you mentioned it. He was having such a good year. He was, potentially going to have such a breakout season for them and maybe even kind of push for top half, NFL draft type numbers. I don't know what they are without him. I haven't seen it in a little while, right? When he hasn't played there, they've kind of been a basically 500 football team, if not a little worse than that. So I'm going to take Missouri in this game, but I think it'll be a really good game. I think it'll probably be something like 31-27.
Andrew, what's your take on this one? This is a very interesting matchup. I think this is one of the ones that a lot of people are kind of sleeping on in that early slate.
And I'm definitely going to be sleeping on it too, because I'm going to be honest with you, I don't have any real opinion towards this game. I mean, hey, you know what? It feels like everybody outside of this group has been high on Boston College. I mean, I know Phil York is a great quarterback, and yes, obviously Boston College losing him for the rest of the season, it sucks. There's just no other way to put it. I just don't know what to expect from BC at this point. I do trust their defense a little bit more than Missouri, that's for sure. I'll probably say, yeah, Boston College wins. Screw it. Why not? They'll take Boston College money line because I know Missouri's only favored by like 1.5. So yeah, BC, screw it. 28-24. That's all I got.
I feel like Missouri is going to get carried by Connor Bazelak. I really like the way he started as well. I think the one thing that they could get hurt with is Boston College, how good they are at running the football. They've kind of gotten back to that after a down year last year. And I think Boston College is going to have to rely on that in order to win without Jurkovec. But I think Missouri just gets it done. I'm going Missouri as well. It's time for the Iron Skillet game. This is the one I was most excited to pick. This is probably one I'm going to be watching pretty closely. Tanner Mordecai is just a phenomenal quarterback. He leads all quarterbacks in the country with 16 touchdowns, which is 5 more than anybody else in the FBS has. Liam, I know you really like both teams. Who's your pick for this one?
I love both teams. I can't wait for this game. It's no secret that my straight up picks have been absolutely horrific to start the season. I've been picking too many underdogs. I have them covering the spread. I pick them outright. I just get burned. So I'm going with TCU, but SMU covers. I went with 34-31. I'm rooting for SMU hard in this game, though. I really want them to win. Just love this receiving trio that they have at wide receiver with Rashee Rice, Roberson, and Danny Gray. And then Grant Calcaterra, who Cam Jones, SMU defensive player, told us, Calc is back. Like, this is the breakout tight end everyone needs to watch. He's been great. The connection with Mordecai has been so good. I'm just so excited to watch this game. And Rashee needs more credit because that Hail Mary was a design tip play. Big Ben, we all know it. He needs more credit for that because that's a sensational superhero-esque play, and he's not getting enough love for it, and it's mind-boggling. Also, just speaking to Rice, get him involved more. I know he has like 4 touchdowns already, but I need more targets for him. I know they have so many lethal pass catchers, but I truly believe that this dude is a future like NFL stud. I'm so high on Rashee, and y'all need to get him the ball more. When they get him the ball, good things happen. And then just speaking real quick on TCU, so much talent there. This game is littered with amazing talent. LaKendrick Van Zant, Trey Hodges Tomlinson, TJ Carter. They're going to try and do their part to stop this SMU passing attack. The TCU offense, Zach Evans, I still believe he's one of the most talented backs in the country. He's top 5 for me still, and he just needs to show that on the field, which he has when he's gotten the that run he had against Cal, that long touchdown run was so sick. And then Quentin Johnson, 6'4" receiver who's beginning his ascension in the wide receiver rankings. He's a stud too. I mean, I'm just so excited for this game. I can't wait for the Iron Skillet.
Well, Liam kind of set the bar there in terms of the description. We've kind of got the storyline there. Andrew, who's your pick, and can you meet that energy, that high that Liam's riding?
You know, I read something earlier today. I read an article, and I think they were interviewing one of the SMU players in regards to this game. This might have been historic, but I don't know where it came from. But the quote was essentially, "Nobody comes to Dallas to go to Fort Worth." And I'll say that's true. And I am not going to Fort Worth on this pick. I am going to go with, technically it's University Park, but it's on the Dallas side of DFW with SMU. Liam knows I've been high on SMU's offense even before the season started. I picked them to make the AAC title game at a plus 600 odds. And I'm going to stick to it. Tanner Mordecai, Oklahoma transfer. Tanner Mordecai. I think he's having a bit of a better season than Spencer Rattler, but we're not going to go into those details. But I love this SMU offense. It's one of the best in the country. I think they have the ability to outscore anybody. I think SMU is going to win this. I think, and the fact, and I actually read one of the last AP poll. They didn't get a single vote in the top 25. And to me, that is an insult. It's a disgrace. I don't give a damn that they opened the season against Abilene Christian. This is a good football team, really good offense. I didn't look into the stats, but I just know this is at worst the top 5 passing efficiency offense in the country. I think it's going to give TCU issues. And fun fact, this is going to be, I think this is, if SMU wins this game, this will be only their 4th win in this series over the last 20 plus years. I think probably going back to like 1998 or something like that. I think SMU finally gets to take the skill at home. And guess what? It ain't going to Fort Worth.
Shehan, who you got?
Yeah, well, I know that Liam brought a lot of energy, but this is one of my games, man. Okay, so my sister actually is a student at SMU. My dad is on faculty on the med school at TCU. I'm a Baylor guy, so I'm kind of caught in the middle of these two things, right? So it's just all sorts of chaos around. But this is going to be one of the most fun games of the weekend. And by the way, that quote was actually from Rashee Rice, reported in the Dallas Morning News. So they're trying to add some steam to it. They're trying to add some fire to it. One other thing that Rashee Rice said is that TCU didn't play SMU last year because they were afraid to. Now, might have something to do with the pandemic, but I don't mind it. I don't hate it. So this game's going to be decided, I think, by TCU's defensive line, because the thing that I didn't expect, because SMU's played a couple close games that really shouldn't have been this close early in the year, especially against Louisiana Tech last week, but even against North Texas, who looks really terrible right now in week 2. Their offensive line has not been in rhythm, especially while run blocking. They've done a good job pass blocking, as you mentioned, with their passing numbers. And I mean, I would take their receiving core over almost everybody in college football. Like, it's that good. It's a top 5, top 10 receiving unit, not just for the group of 5, but in college football. Like, all 3 of those top guys, Rashee Rice, Danny Gray, and Reggie Robertson, are going to play in the NFL. But all that said, I mean, I do need to see them establish that run inside, right? They need to be able to win some of those one-on-one matchups. And TCU's defensive line has not been very good this year. They only have 1 sack after looking so good in the final 6 games of last season. So if they can win that matchup, especially in the run game, and clear some paths, and they have talented running backs in Ulysses Bentley and TJ McDaniel, and even the North Texas transfer Trey Sigers, if they can clear some running lanes, I feel really good about SMU's ability to win this game. I'm concerned, though. I'm concerned that that's going to happen. I'm going to take TCU narrowly. I think that the 9 to 10 point number is a little much for me. But, TCU, you mentioned it. Right now, the Iron Skillet lives in Dallas for the first time since TCU joined the Big 12. I don't think that they're going to forget that. I think that, not that the trash talk matters, because if you need trash talk to get going for a game, then you're probably not a very good football team. But I do think that sort of thing will play into this. It'll make the atmosphere great. The atmosphere is going to be in Fort Worth, so I think that it's going to, add to that as well. I'm going to take TCU. I think it is probably going to be a little bit of a higher scoring game. So I'm going to go TCU 35, SMU 28.
What I really can't wait to see in this game, and you talked about kind of the one-on-one matchups, and Liam talked about the talent in this game, and I want to see how TCU's secondary, with Noah Daniels and, Hodges Tomlinson, how they kind of handle the firepower, with Rashee Rice and Reggie Robertson and Gray and Calcaterra, and, they can throw it to the backs as well. So I really want to see that. And then Zach Evans, he's averaging 8 yards a carry. That dude is phenomenal. Liam, I'm surprised he didn't talk more at length about him. But I just think SMU's passing offense is just too overwhelming, and I think the Ponies take it at TCU. I think SMU wins this one. The fourth game on this one is a really interesting one. The fact that we're even picking this game to me is beyond just insanity. Boise State against Utah State. If you would have told me that in week 4 we'd be picking this game, I would have thought you were insane. So let's start with Andrew. Boise State, is 1-2. Utah State's 3-0. That's insane enough. But are you picking Utah State to stay perfect here?
Nah, I think I like Boise State a little bit more. They had a really rough go against Oklahoma State last week, but last week's guest Jack Mack did say that he's picking Oklahoma State to go all the way to make the playoff. So I'm gonna hold on his word for it. So I'm gonna take this agenda and say that Boise State lost by 1 point to a playoff team last week. I'm gonna ride with that.
Jackson, what?
He said that Oklahoma State was going to be a playoff team at the end of the season.
Did he see OSU and think it was Ohio State? Because, did he watch any of those games? I don't know about that one.
His direct quote was, he thinks when we get to Bedlam, an undefeated matchup between the two, and he thinks that Oklahoma State in a few months we're looking and we're like, wait, they're ranked 5th, 6th? This is a potential playoff team?
Are they going to go undefeated this week when they play Kansas State? Undefeated through week 8? I don't.
He's really high on them.
The nice thing about the internet is anybody's allowed to get on it and say any words in any order that they want. Anyway, keep going.
So, that's essentially it. I mean, I just think Boise State, I just really like Boise State. Obviously, Utah State, they're having a really good passing attack right now. Put up 49 on Air Force last week. So, I do think this is going to be a very close game. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I'll give Boise State the edge. I think they'll win this game. I think they'll win a 28-21 or so. That 9.5 point favorite for Boise State is a little too much for me. I don't think that's giving Utah State enough credit up to this point. So, I see 4.7 point max win for Boise State. Boise State wins, but Utah State covers.
The fact that line is even within single digits is awesome. I'm such a big fan of Utah State, but I'll talk about them a little bit later. Shehan, who is your pick for this one?
Yeah, the thing that's kind of been interesting as the Mountain West has developed over the last couple of years is that I think that they've really done a good job of bringing kind of a culture of physicality to that conference, right? I think that's something that we've really seen with Boise State. We saw it with the Matt Wells teams at Utah State. We obviously have seen it with Fresno State, with San Diego State. And so the thing that concerns me a little bit with Utah State in this game is I don't know if they're prepared for that, right? It's been a couple years since they've played up to that standard. The talent is awesome, right? I mean, Logan Bonner, I don't know what Blake Anderson's deal is with playing multiple quarterbacks. I don't know why he loves to do that so much, but they do have two good quarterbacks. I think obviously Logan Bonner's the better guy that they've got, the guy who he brought with him from Arkansas State. Devin Tompkins is maybe the most dynamic player in this whole game, the receiver from Utah State, who right now leads the nation in receiving yards. They've got some really good players, so this is going to be a ball game. But I do think that just when it comes down to physicality, when it comes down to, winning those one-on-one battles against very physical defensive backs and against press coverage, it's just an adjustment. I think it just takes some time. I don't know whether Utah State's quite there as yet. I think that it's a credit to Blake Anderson that he's already got these guys coached up as well as he has, that he's got them executing at such a high level. But I think that this is one of those things that an early slate, not a conference slate, doesn't really prepare you super well for. I mean, none of these teams that they really played against are physical in that kind of way necessarily. And so I think that ends up being the difference in this game. I still think that both teams have great quarterbacks, both teams have great receivers. I still think it ends up being I think both teams are able to score, but I think it probably ends up being something like, 31-21 Boise State.
Who did I not get to? Is it Andrew? It was Liam. Okay. Liam, who is your pick for this one?
So I'm so excited for this game, but I'm so hurt that it's at 9 a.m. I don't understand. I get that they're on CBS, which is sick and an incredible opportunity for Utah State, especially. This is the first time a network is going to do their game, like a national network. But yeah, that's so cool for them. I don't know why it's at 9 a.m. though. This would have been such a fun late night game. I'm going with Boise State 38-33. I'm looking forward to this game so much. As we spoke about Devin Tompkins, and I wrote an article on him the other day. He has been the most prolific receiver in the country. He's scored touchdowns of 60 yards or greater in back-to-back weeks or whatever. He's averaging like 153 receiving yards per game, a touchdown per game, 8.3 catches per game. He's been sensational in and his explosiveness is mesmerizing. The burst that he has when he catches that ball is able to just leave every defender in the cloud of dust. He has one of the best explosive bursts in the country, I think. And what Blake Anderson has done with this program, 3 games in, they've already hit their win total for the season of 3 that Vegas set. That's insane. This team was given no expectations. They weren't given a single thought in the offseason. I know I didn't give them a thought in the offseason. They were picked at the bottom of the Mountain West. Whatever, win a few games. Okay. They're in a position where they could win 8-9 games this year. I spoke about it on Monday. I've tweeted about it. They have 5 or 6 just gimmies. They still have UNLV, New Mexico State, New Mexico, Colorado State. I'm tripping over one of them. And then they could play and beat San Jose State and Wyoming, who I believe they host both of them, if I'm not mistaken. And then they have next week's rivalry against BYU. This storyline at Utah State and Logan, Utah is just one that I'm obsessed with and going to be tracking all year. We spoke about how they used 2 quarterbacks and they brought Bonner over from Arkansas State. He also brought Justin Rice over, back-to-back Mountain West Defensive Player of the Week, 3 interceptions on the year as a linebacker. He's at his 3rd school. He was at Fresno State. He was at Arkansas State. Now he's at Utah State, and he's thriving. I spoke way too much about this, so real quick, Boise State, get the ball in Khalil Shakir's hands. When they get the ball in his hands, they're better. They're a winning football team when he has the ball. I could see him going for 10 catches and 2 touchdowns in this game.
All right, I guess I'll do it. I'll go with Utah State. I'll say that they're ready for this one. To be honest, I don't really like Boise State that much. I did coming into the year a little bit, but the run game is non-existent, which I did not expect. I really like George Halani and Cyrus Habibi-Likio to kind of be a 1-2 punch, and it's just not the case. I feel like once they get the ball to Khalil Shakir, then things get rolling. But other than that, I don't know if anybody else has been that reliable just yet. I think the defense is not up to the task of facing an offense like Utah State, one that puts up over 350 passing yards a game and one that puts up over 200 rushing yards a game. They're the only team in the country that does that so far. I like Utah State to win this one by 2 scores. I'm going Utah State in an upset, if you want to call it an upset. I know they have the better record, but I'm just gonna go out on a limb. And if I'm wrong, put it on Twitter. I really don't care. I like Utah State. Next one, we're gonna go with San Jose State and Western Michigan. I want to start with Liam because I know you've got a lot to say about this one, but we've already gone pretty close to our time limit here, so it doesn't matter anymore. Liam, just what do you got on this one?
Yeah, I do have a lot to say. The first thing I want to say is another just incredible Group of 5 matchup, and people that love college football and don't dedicate time to watching the Group of 5, you're insane. This football is so good. I'm disgusted by how San Jose State played last week. I really believe that the 10-plus drops that their receivers had and just the sloppiness in that game that them in Hawaii had, it was 2020 COVID football. There were no fans there. it was sloppy and uninspiring. There was no emotion in it. So kind of throwing that away. But why I'm not throwing away is that they're going from Hawaii and now they're going to Kalamazoo. That's such a bizarre just trip that they have to take here. Dog needs to stop barking. Talk about such a huge game here. Yeah, it seemed like they dropped 772 passes last week. Not expecting that this week. Starkel and Tyler Nevins are going to need to be very, very, very sharp in this one. And then just speaking to Western Michigan real quick, Caleb Alby is one of the better quarterbacks in Group of 5 football. He is a star. We saw it last year when he shocked Toledo in that bizarre Maction weeknight game. Their receivers, we spoke so highly of SMU's receivers. The receivers that Western has is just another receiving crop that is one of the better ones in Group of 5. Sky Moore is a stud. Jalen Hall is a stud. Corey Crooms is nasty. And just such a talented receiver trio to have at a MAC school. That's such a blessing. I was disappointed in how they played against Michigan. I thought they'd have put up a better fight at least. Then you go out there and you just kind of shock the world and beat Pitt. That's substantial, like really good for them. Happy for them. Happy that there's a MAC team that we see thriving right now. So I picked Western. I forgot if I even said that. I picked Western to win 41-37.
Shehan, who are you going with on this one?
Yeah, I mean, definitely one of the more underrated quarterback battles in college football this year with Caleb Elby and with Nick Starkel. But, heading into the year, I would have had San Jose State in this game easy, right? Like, that's what we kind of expected after last year. But, it's been a real struggle for them on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, Nick Starkel has yet to complete 60% of his passes in a game. He's kind of going the wrong direction with that, right? And some of it has to do with separation. Some of that has to do with drops. It's not all his fault necessarily, but that offense hasn't really showed up so far this season. And defensively, they were very opportunistic last year, and that's been a struggle for them again this year. And going against a quarterback like Caleb Elby, I think is going to be a real challenge for them. I don't know whether they're prepared for that. I don't know whether they have the depth right now on the back end to really withstand that. And so for me, I have been very impressed by what I've seen from Western Michigan these first couple of weeks. The Michigan thing doesn't bother me too much. Sometimes I just play teams that are way more talented, and it's just tough, right? I mean, and the way that Michigan plays is really to try to bowl you over. And if you're smaller, I mean, there's not really that much you can do about it. And so I do have Western Michigan winning this game. I do think it's going to be a pretty high scoring game. I'm going to go something like 44-35.
Andrew, who you got?
So we all saw what Nick Circle did week 0 against Southern Utah, and I feel like we were all in love with what he was going to do for the season. And his touchdown interception ratio is 2 to 3 cents. Shehan said it perfectly. He has yet to hit the 60% completion mark. I'm going to go ahead and take the better quarterback in this game. I think they have a lot more fire, both mentally and physically, in terms of what they bring to the game. I think they're going to go in with a really high up with what after they did against Pitt last week. And you know what? I am very upset that they did not do well against Michigan. I'm still very upset, as Liam knew. Okay, I was very high on Western Michigan to cover their 17-point spread against Michigan. They did not. They lost like 44-14. I'm still upset about them to this day, but we are not going to get too much into it. I do forgive them on a small scale. I think they'll beat San Jose State. It'll be high scoring. I think like a 38-31, something like that would seem reasonable.
I love that we're picking this game too. I mean, there's not a whole lot of Power 5 ranked matchups this week. We'll get to one of them next, but Liam kind of took all my notes here. Western Michigan has a ton of playmakers on offense. I really love what Caleb Ellaby's been doing. You talked about the receivers, but the running backs I really like equally as much. Ladarius Jefferson and Sean Tyler are one of the best running back duos so far in this season. I feel like Nick Starkel has just not been able to find it. You talked about the separation and the drops. I feel like the drops will probably, that'll probably cease to exist in starting this week. I feel like San Jose State's offense will kind of get going. I just feel like Western Michigan's is a little bit better and farther along. I like Western Michigan in a close one. And talking about that ranked matchup, this one might be pretty important down the line when you talk about the college football playoff. Not a lot of people might be talking about it that way, but Texas A&M and Arkansas, both teams play, a lot of the ranked teams in the SEC down the line. So this one could be really big in terms of, who beat who kind of resume stuff. So Shehan, I want to start with you here. A&M is favored. Arkansas is, still kind of one of those teams that like you don't really know what they are just yet. That Texas win looks good, but who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I'm glad you're calling on me first because I will actually be in attendance at this game this weekend at Jerry World. So that'll be a lot of fun. So watching Texas A&M the first couple weeks of the year, there's the quarterback stuff, Haynes King getting hurt, all of that. But the thing that's been more concerning to me than anything else is I feel like their offensive line has really struggled so far this year. Even last week playing against New Mexico, I felt like they didn't win their battles that easily. And I mean, again, that's New Mexico, who might be one of the 5 worst teams in America right now. And so they did have 3 guys go out over the course of that game. So hopefully some of those guys are going to be ready to play. But if there's a team that's going to expose you in the trenches, it's Arkansas, right? I mean, this is a team that was able to go against a very talented Texas front on both sides of the ball and really bully them in a lot of ways. And, and again, I don't think the Texas offensive line is great, but like, it's not terrible. And they made them look like a JV offensive line. And so if that does become an issue in this game, I think it's going to be a really long day for Zach Calzada. I mean, I think that he's done well when he's been able to stay within structure and make design reads and things like that. But if he's on the move, if he's having to make quick decisions, I'm very worried about that for Texas A&M. The flip side of that is that Arkansas is not going to run all over Texas A&M, right? I mean, this is one of the better defensive lines that there is in college football this year, led by DeMarvin Leal. So I think that Texas A&M is going to pull it out, but I would not be surprised at all if it ends up being a very physical, low-scoring game. So I'm going to go Texas A&M. I'm going to say that they win 24-17.
Andrew, you going Pig Suey here?
I am going Gig'em. Sean's right. I feel like going into the season, we kind of knew a little bit about Texas A&M. They were going to struggle. They were going to change out 4 of their 5 offensive linemen. Kenyon Green for me is the best offensive tackle in college football this year. Shout out Kenyon Green. He's actually from my side of Houston, so we'll forever give love to that guy. And everybody that knows me knows that I was huge on Isaiah Spiller. He was kind of slow the first 2 weeks. He did get that game winner against Colorado. He did get a breakout game against New Mexico last week. We'll see how much that really matters. But I think this is a really good game for him to showcase, and I think that the A&M offensive line, I think while it's still a work in progress, is getting slowly better and better and better. I know Arkansas is very good in the trenches right now. We'll see how Treylon Burks can do against this A&M defense. And guys, this A&M defense, it is nasty. It's almost impossible to run on. You kind of already said earlier, one of the best passing defenses in the country. This is gonna be a really big game for that defense. I think we're gonna look at another low scoring game. Calzada, before the season even started, I wanted Haynes King to win that job over Calzada just because I thought Haynes King brought a little bit more dynamism into the Aggie offense. And Calzada, when he gets pressured, he's just not going to be comfortable in the pocket. He's not a dual threat guy. He's not going to go outside the tackles. He's not going to feel comfortable in that aspect. So if Arkansas can get pressure from their edge rushers, I could really see this being a bad game for Calzada. But I'm gonna like I said, I'm gonna trust Kenyon a little bit, and Jamar Johnson, who plays on the right tackle, I think he'll play a little bit better too. I think A&M wins relatively low scoring. I'll say like 24-17, 24-20, something along those lines.
Liam, who you got in this one?
Gig'em. I've got A&M here 26-17, kind of an obscure score, hoping for some no context, like bad punt. That punt goes bad, the snap goes bad. I could get a safety, good content there. I don't know. The first thing is Zach Calzada has received like so much hate from Aggies fans for his performance. And I want him to just shut them up so much with a good performance here and a big win. I love Isaiah Spiller, obviously, but Devin Achane, I believe I'm finally pronouncing his name right. Hopefully. I love Achane so much. I think
I'm pretty sure it's a cane. I thought it was a cane.
Is it?
It's like Achane, like Achane, but it still is chain.
Okay.
So not 2 chains, but he's a chain. Okay, cool.
Okay. Achane. I think he's a future NFL player. I love his role in this offense. I think he's just a stud. I wish he got more recognition, but we've got to give him the recognition. So Jalen Weidermeyer, another just outstanding player. I want him to go and make life easier for Calzada. Present yourself as the big target that you are and just make things easier. Their defense has obviously been elite, and you guys spoke to the resume win. Right now, this would be a huge win for A&M's resume, but if you look ahead, Arkansas is about to go downhill because they're playing at Georgia, they're playing at Ole Miss, hosting Auburn's not a gimme. They still have Alabama later. Like, this is going to be tough for them. I know that they've played so well early, but man, when you look at their schedule, it's hard to be optimistic. And for me, my thing is it's about when you beat a team, not how they ended up. So A&M beating Arkansas here, beating them now when they're at their highest of highs, that's huge. I don't care how Arkansas finishes. You go and get your win here, and it's big time. So, yeah, rolling with A&M here, 26-17.
I will speak a little bit to the quarterback situation. A&M guys, I don't know what Haynes King's situation is going to be. Watch out for number one pocket passer in the country and Connor Weichman out of Bridgeland High School, based here in Houston. Saw the guy a few times, guys. He is spectacular. I'm not expecting him to win the A&M starting job as a true freshman next year, but whenever he does take that job, he's going to take over. He's going to take it over by storm. I'm really believing that he's going to put up a Johnny Manziel type impact with that Aggies offense. So Aggies, you may not be too impressed with Calzada right now, and you may feel a little bit down as far as Haynes King's long-term health, but guys, Connor Weigman, he's going to be here, and I'm so looking forward. I don't know how I haven't written a piece on him yet. He's just spectacular, and I think he's going to be A&M's quarterback of the future with no issue.
Clip that, frame it, put a big old cherry on it, and put it on Twitter, because that's a bold statement. I like the guy too, but the Johnny Manziel thing, I feel like some people might
this dude had 7 touchdowns in one half against one of the best high school defenses in the Houston area. Yeah. And one of them was like a 48-yard receiving touchdown. Guys, this dude was unreal, dude. I've seen Aaron Rodgers play live, okay? That was better than any Aaron Rodgers performance I've ever seen live.
All right, let's relax.
I'm a Packers fan.
We don't have to do all this. We don't got to say, yeah, but you're not happy with him right now, okay? I read all the headlines this offseason.
That's not true. That is not true, okay?
But, I will say, Haynes King, I said this before. Haynes King is literally, if you ask Texas A&M fans to make a quarterback in a lab, they would create Haynes King because he's an East Texan, coach's son, played at Longview High School, led them to a state championship, not a national championship, for the first time in 80 plus years. And he was a 5-star for a long time until a lot of his class graduated at Longview, and his senior year, the numbers just weren't as good, but he was still an incredible player for them. So Haynes King's gonna be fine. Connor Weigman's not gonna come in and win the job right away, in my opinion. But
I never said he did.
Yes. Weigman's a really good player. Weigman's a really good player, and he's going to be a big time player for A&M. But we don't got to rush him along. We don't got to compare him to nobody. We don't got to do any of that right this second. But Weigman's a name to know probably 3 years down the road.
I thought you went far with the Johnny Manziel thing. Then you put Aaron Rodgers in there.
I said that I did not say he was better than Aaron Rodgers. What I said was that of all the games that I've seen Aaron Rodgers play live, okay, in person, it was not as good as what I saw from Connor Weigman. And yes, I know it's high school, okay, but Klein Kane was a really good team last year. Woodlands is one of the best teams in the country. Was one of the best teams in the state. Woodlands has made the Texas State playoffs 20 times in a row. Klein Kane has been one of the best over the last 2 years. They got 2 or 3 guys that are in the top 250 players in the country. This is not a joke. I've seen really good high school recruits struggle against at least somewhat decent teams. Guys, he's balling out against fantastic high school teams.
What Aaron Rodgers game did you see? Did you go to the Saints game a couple weeks ago? Did you go to the Tampa Bay game last year? Because I would never go to Florida to start off. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was 20. Okay, I will say this. This was during a year that they did not make the playoffs. This was 2018 when they played the Falcons. And this was the first game after Mike McCarthy got fired. That was a great time to be alive, but not a good season. But that was a fun time to be alive. Moving on now. That was we'll have to put that on Twitter because some people are gonna have fun with that. Lauren, I don't know if Lauren's gonna, Lauren's our Texas A&M gal. I don't know if she's gonna think that highly of him, but we'll see. Liam, I know really wants to get into this game. UTSA and Memphis. we kind of slipped this one in at the last minute just because it was such a good group of 5 matchup. So Liam, I'm going to start with you. What's your pick for this one?
UTSA 35-30. The Roadrunners defense needs more respect. I hope that the vision I've seen for a few years now is starting to be seen by everyone else. Rashad Wisdom is the hardest hitting safety in the country, the hardest hitting defender in the country. He's so good at this sport. I'm devastated for him that he had this interception last week called back for some other person's penalty. Whatever. Him and Parks at safety, such a good duo. Jalen Haynes inside the interior. Not only is he balling at defensive tackle, but even on the outside, and he's a big boy, and he's got smooth moves, so fluid. Love watching him rush the passer. He's showing up, and his NFL tape is going to look good. This is such a good matchup too. Just the clash of UTSA's elite defense against a lethal Memphis offense. You wrote about Calvin Austin. Y'all gotta go check that article out. It was real good. But for Memphis to win this game, Hennigan has to be elite. He has to be elite, and I don't know if he will be because I'm so high on this UTSA defense. Clifford Chapman is another guy having a good year. And then you just look at the UTSA offense, and Frank Harris, his progression over these years has been massive. He's really just come into this role of like a game manager, just keeping it calm, and he's just showed that he could throw it downfield, throw it into the bucket, and thrive. You have Sincere McCormick, a runner that you could always lean on, a sturdy offensive line. How about Zachary Franklin, the receiver who has 22 grabs for 346 yards and 3 touchdowns? He's been fantastic. UTSA is going to have a monster season. They've been so fun to watch. They should eventually be America's beloved Group of 5 team, Roadrunners.
Yeah, they're definitely ours. We're the official fan club of the Roadrunners. Shehan, I know you were a Texas football guy. Are you going with the Runners here to get the win at the Liberty Bowl?
Yeah, I have to do this a second time on this podcast. I was the original UTSA stan, okay? I was there in the mud last year when they hired some, random guys to be their assistant coaches. But seriously, I mean, this is such a well-coached football team. And the way that I describe them for people who haven't seen them before is I always, and this is, it sounds like a lazy comparison because, for obvious reasons, I feel like they're coached so much like a high school team. And what I mean by that is they do such a good job, especially on the offensive side of the ball, I'll say, they do such a good job of finding unique ways to put their guys in positions to succeed. And one way that they've done that is that they have a lot of guys from different backgrounds. So they're not married to one system. They're not married to one style of play. One thing we saw a lot last year with their quarterback situations that they had to play 3 quarterbacks because of different injury situations, right? And Frank Harris is more of a runner than he is a passer. Josh Adkins is more of a drop back guy. And Lowell Narcisse is more of a drop back guy. So they really changed up their offense based on their opponent, based on who they had under center. And everything kind of was built around funneling all their offense through Sincere McCormick, who finished number 2 in the nation last year in rushing yards. So they've got so many weapons. They've got so many pieces. They really believe. I mean, I said this over the offseason, and I left Dave Campbell's Texas Football, which is the last place I worked, so I don't get to be there day to day as much as I was before. But like, something special is happening there, right? Like something special is happening there. Everybody, like, you hear so much about like, oh, people believe, people communicate, all this sort of stuff, but like, when you're in the building, you feel it, right? Like you feel everybody really being on the same page to that extent. And with Memphis, they're starting a freshman quarterback, like you guys mentioned, somebody who, by the way, the staff will have a lot of familiarity with because just last year he was playing at Denton Ryan High School and leading them to a state championship. But, I think that they have enough pieces on defense to be able to really change things up on him, maybe make him a little bit confused. You mentioned all those great names in the secondary that they've done a great job of developing at UTSA. So I do think that they're going to be able to win this game. I think they're going to try to control this game and prevent some of these explosive plays from being able to beat them. So I think that they're going to try to slow down the game just a little bit, even though they can keep up from a scoring perspective. So I think that they win. I think that it probably looks something like, and this is still a relatively high score, but relative to what it could be, something like 35-28.
Andrew, where are you going with this one?
So if you had to ask me to make a third favorite, like my third most favorite football team this year, besides the two that I'm a fan of, it would probably be UTSA. I can't do it. I legitimately cannot do it. And I know Liam's going to be looking at me like, I trusted you. Okay. How can you backstab UTSA like this? I just think this is just a really tall task for UTSA. When they got the win over Illinois a few weeks ago, that was already massive for that program. I think whenever you go against Memphis, against the type of offense that Memphis is, now I will say this: Seth Hannigan, we're gonna need to know what type of Seth Hannigan are we gonna get this week. Are we gonna get the one that didn't even break 160 yards last week against Mississippi State, or are we gonna get the one that threw for 5 touchdowns against Arkansas State? And and it comes down to a lot of his play. He probably should have been the quarterback that I win with in terms of our player to watch for the week. I think Memphis is going to win this game. I think they're going to have a little bit more aggressive style. I think they're going to win. I say something along the lines of a 31-27 victory, but this will not be a bad loss on UTSA's record. This is still out of conference. This doesn't affect their, in terms of their standing in the Conference USA, in my opinion. I still think they're going to get one loss maximum in that conference for the season. This is going to be, I don't think good losses exist in aspects, but this is at least going to be a loss where they're going to be like, okay, look, we can at least build on this. We'll see what is defensively. And Frank Harris, like Shehan said, more of a running guy rather than a passing guy. I think that's going to be a little bit difficult for him to manage. So we'll just see. I think Memphis does get their win, close one right there in the Liberty Bowl.
Yeah, Liam talked about it a little bit. I did talk about Calvin Austin in my recent story, and I think he's going to be the difference maker in this one. I hate that I can't go with UTSA. I love UTSA as well, even though being a Pacific Northwest guy, I can't watch him as much. But Calvin Austin, I just think, is one of the best all-purpose players in the country. He's touched the ball 23 times, and he has almost 500 all-purpose yards. Now, that punt return that he had Mississippi State should not have counted. There's no question about that. However, that was a smart play to realize that they didn't, call it yada yada, even though they kind of did. But whatever.
So what you're saying is that he only has like 400 something all-purpose yards in our minds.
It's still impressive, is what I'm saying. He's still an impressive player despite the SEC's fumble with the refs, which isn't much of a surprise. But it's not just him either. Sean Dykes at tight end is one of the most underrated in the country. Javon Ivory is a guy who's really promising. And then the run game, I think, is promising as well. Brendan Thomas has 400 yards, over 400 yards. He can break off a long run. I just think, like Andrew said, I think this is a little bit too much of a test right now for UTSA. If this was in San Antonio, I think I would take UTSA. But I feel like, on the road, just, I think it's a big test. And I do think Memphis is a really good football team as well. The offense is just loaded. Seth Hennigan, again, that's going to be one player that I really want to see what kind of player we get. And I think that he's going to show up, and I like Memphis in a close one. And then our last, West Coast game that I'm excited for, and I know Liam is as well, is UCLA and Stanford. I want to start with you. UCLA is coming off just that incredible game against, for not UCLA fans, and that incredible game against Fresno State. And Stanford, I mean, they just absolutely looked putrid against Kansas State, and they've rattled off 2 straight 40-point games. So I'm wondering where you're leaning here, Liam. Who are you picking for this one?
I'm not looking forward to this. I'm not a UCLA fan. I'm a UTSA fan. Runners through and through. Ever since I was a kid, there's proof. I was like 12 years old, had a UTSA shirt. So, yeah, I'm a UTSA fan. Now, looking at this game with no biased eyes, because I'm not a UCLA fan, I have UCLA winning 27-23. There is no optimism in this pick, as I saw Big Brother Fresno State beat us once again. And this is Stanford, another sibling that destroys us over and over and over and over again. So there is no optimism here. David Shaw, that mad scientist, absolute genius, is probably just going to beat us. I don't know. I just went UCLA 27-23. I think they'll bounce back. I love our offensive line. I love the run designs and the concepts we have. I'm pretty disappointed in what I saw last week. It was too much throwing the ball. Charbonnet has really impressed me because he wasn't someone I was high on. And he's didn't get touches last week. Brendan Brown, when he touched the ball, was good, but we weren't running the ball enough. I didn't understand that. Defensively, in that fourth quarter, in the final 5-10 minutes or whatever, we fell back in our ways of the past where we played preventish defense. We played very lax coverage, kind of letting them throw the ball and then tackling them, but giving up chunk plays. Burned us for 2 touchdowns. I have no clue what that was. It was similar to the defense Ohio State has been playing this year. Garbage. My player to watch here, Cam Brown, Texas A&M transfer. Get him the ball more. He needs more touches, more targets. He's been very good when he's been involved. And then Sean Ryan, best offensive lineman in the country that doesn't play for – okay, best offensive lineman in the country that's on the West Coast. We'll say that. I love Sean Ryan. Needs more NFL draft love. And then for Stanford, Caillou Blue-Kelly already has 2 interceptions, returned 1 to the house, 4 pass deflections, 17 tackles. Las Vegas product out here. He's fantastic. He's very intelligent, has elite positioning when he's defending passes. That's someone that NFL draft fans will fall in love with. He's also easy to spot when they're wearing, oh, wait, this is Stanford's first home game. Shoot, I don't know if he's going to do it then. When they wear the all whites, he's the only one on defense wearing high black socks. So easy to spot. See what happens this week, though. But love Caillou Blue-Kelly taking the Bruins, though.
Can we put some damn respect on Fresno State and Jake Heisman? I mean, that was just a heroic performance.
Okay,
Now,
yeah,
UCLA, I will. I'm huge on Fresno State.
So am I. That's why it hurts so much. Having to see Jalen Crawford torch us like that, someone in Ronnie Rivers, that hurt.
I can't relate. I'm an Oregon fan. We beat him. So, I can't relate to that. But, I think
it's 4 times in a row.
Andrew, who's your pick for this one?
I'm going to go ahead and just make it quick. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he's had such a massive improvement over the last 2 weeks compared to, well, let's just be honest, his disappointing first game against Hawaii. I think he's gonna lead this win for the Bruins. They're gonna win. I'm not massively impressed too much with Stanford's too, even though they did beat USC like it was 2007 again. I mean, they played Vanderbilt the next week. Come on, man. Let's not give them too much credit here. I did think UCLA wins. Zach Charbonnet, get him more than 6 rushes in this game, for the love of God. All right, he's too explosive a running back to only give him 6 rushes. Chip Kelly, do your job. Give him the ball more. UCLA, I don't care about score. I just hope they win.
I just heard Chip Kelly get him the ball more, and I had flashbacks to 2012 and 13 with like Kenyon Barner and DeAnthony Thomas. Shehan, who's your pick for UCLA and Stanford?
Yeah, I do think one thing is that Stanford has found their guy, I think, at quarterback in Tanner McKee. They've looked a lot better since he's taken the field. So I'm willing to kind of write off that first game against Kansas State. I think that they are going to be better heading forward. But you mentioned it. I mean, 16 carries by running backs in this past game. They really kind of fell into Fresno State's trap in a lot of ways by trying to play shootout football with them and then getting real conservative with it. So I think against Stanford, in some ways, the fact that Stanford's a team that really likes to pound the ball might actually work to UCLA's advantage, because it's going to be kind of that kind of game, a kind of slow the pace down game. I do think that Zach Charbonnet, again, I will say I wish I had a better idea of why he only carried the ball 6 times, but I don't get the Pac-12 network. So, I had to watch highlights after the
Nobody
game.
Gets the Pac-12 network. I had to watch that game on like a 4-minute delay.
But
I was just so mad that the Colorado Minnesota game was on Pac-12 network, because I was like, oh, that's an interesting matchup. I look at it, it's on Pac-12 network, and I'm like, fuck.
Yeah, like I can only have so many subscriptions in this world before I give up. Okay, and I'm sorry, I'm not doing it. I'm not subscribing to the Pac-12 network. But all that said, I expect that they'll have more than 16 running back carries in this game. I think that they're going to make the game easier for Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and so I do think that UCLA is just going to kind of muscle its way to a win, but. Again, I watch for Tanner McKee. I think it's going to be interesting.
Also,
I just want to say one thing, Liam, don't start, because I want to call you out on what you said earlier. You said you grew up a UTSA fan. Do you know how long UTSA's football been around?
Not long. It's only been a few years.
2011.
Yeah.
I thought
2012 they became an FBS program.
Yeah.
Okay,
I had a shirt. It was because I'm wearing a St. John shirt on a college football podcast. I'm an obscure college basketball guy. So I had a UTSA basketball shirt.
Got my mini helmet here. I'm the real deal. I'm an OG. Listen, that's all I'm saying.
All I will say is this. So what because I really don't remember. I don't remember that they had a football program until like 2013. Did they spend 2011 as FCS or something, or what?
Yeah, so the way that programs kind of start as FBS programs is that they spend 1 year transitioning, and then in 2012, I believe they joined as a member of the then FBS WAC, and then in 2013 moved over, I believe, straight to Conference USA.
Because I remember they were essentially in obscurity. Like I don't even think I knew that they were a national football program until I scrolled past them on like NCAA Football 14 or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's crazy stuff. Shout out to Evans Okacha, the first leading rusher for them, because he was the running back in my high school when I was a freshman.
I played with Okacha all the time on NCAA 14. Also, I just did want to say one thing on the UCLA game. It's on Pac-12 Network again. So,
well, then I look forward to all the tweets about it. So, I'm sure it will be great for someone.
For the one person that has it, congrats.
I got it. Yep, I've got it. If anybody ever needs updates on a Pac-12 Network game, I got you, because I watch that a lot. I watch all the little recap stuff that they do at the end of the night. I'm all over it. So if anybody needs that, I'm your plug. And our final game, we finally come to it. We were supposed to do an hour show. That's not happened, Shehan. Hopefully, you're okay with that. We told you an hour and a half, and we're kind of past that. But our last game is Kansas State, Oklahoma State. We'll start with you. You're our guest.
All right, a Big 12 matchup to end the night. I'm a Big 12 guy. I mentioned it, right? Like, I don't see Oklahoma State as a playoff game or playoff team, because I don't see them getting past this week unscathed. Now, Kansas State, since they've lost quarterback, since they lost Skylar Thompson, have moved to Will Howard. We saw that happen last year, and they were kind of a disaster, right? Like, I mean, they really kind of sucked once that switch flipped. I think they lost like their last 5 games with Will Howard at quarterback instead of Skylar Thompson. And that was the real hope of this year, is that with Skylar Thompson healthy, could they take a step forward? Could they maybe be a Big 12 contender? But the thing that I'll say is that they've still looked pretty good since then. They've still done a good job of competing. They're a really, really solid defense. They've been one of the leaders nationally in getting after the passer. They have a running back, Deuce Vaughn, who's as versatile as any running back in America. I think that Nevada last week was a really good test for them, despite being a Mountain West game, right? I mean, Carson Strong, one of the best quarterbacks in America, potential NFL draft pick, and they really kind of did a good job of getting after him. So I think that Kansas State, at least for this week, is able to kind of keep the magic going. It is on the road in Stillwater, and Oklahoma State notoriously, for whatever reason, plays so much better in Stillwater than they do on the road. I wish that I had an answer for that. Sometimes it's just as simple as, teams play better at home because college kids like to wake up in their own beds. But, I think that this is probably one more week that they keep it going. Once you get past that, they get Oklahoma and Iowa State, and the 2 weeks after that, I don't know, that might be the end of the road for Kansas State. But I do think that Kansas State can make this game ugly, can make it a very run-centered game, can force Spencer Sanders into mistakes. And so I'm going to take Kansas State to win.
Andrew, I know you thoroughly enjoyed Jack Mack's Oklahoma State prediction. Do you think that their run starts with this game?
I mean, didn't it technically start last week? But
That's true.
I guess I'll take Oklahoma State. I'm not too 100% sold on Oklahoma State. I don't think they're a top 25 team yet. I know a lot of people in our group, they believe that they are. I just don't think so yet. I like to see what Kansas State does with Will Howard for the week. I just think I trust Oklahoma State just a little bit more as a unit. We'll see how Spencer does this weekend, because let's be honest, he only threw like 83 passing yards last week or something like that. I'm going to go ahead and just say Oklahoma State. I just feel like they just got a better defense, in my opinion. Deuce Vaughn, though, I think what Kansas State they're going to try and do, I think they're going to try and like keep Will Howard a little bit low key, don't make him do too much, and I think they're just going to try and win the game with possession with Deuce Vaughn. Top 5 running back, let's be honest. I think that's a confirmation at this point. Oklahoma State wins, but very close.
Well, I take offense, because didn't their playoff case start by only beating Missouri State by 7 points? Come on.
And only barely coming back against Tulsa.
Yeah, that's how you build a resume, right? You beat Bobby Petrino.
Yeah, that's a college football playoff resume right there. Liam, we're going to finish off with you. Who's your pick for this one?
Well, I'm first off overcome with sadness that Nevada's perfect season didn't happen. So I'm holding a vendetta against Kansas State for that. jerks. I have Oklahoma State winning here because it's based off my theory with last week's game for West Virginia, Virginia Tech. West Virginia was the 3.5 point favorite there, and it just didn't make sense. And it's why I call the public bait line, where the public just gets baited into taking the road team with the points. So I'm going Oklahoma State here strictly because they're favored by 6. They've had 3 poor wins. The Boise State win is much better, obviously. It's a good win and all, but it's 3 meh wins. Well, 2 very meh. Whatever. Okay. Oklahoma State 28-17. I don't think it's going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be sloppy. Just bad turnovers. Spencer Sanders needs to play at a consistent level. Like, literally, dude, just be consistent in any aspect. Put your team in good spots. Jalen Warren has been fantastic for Oklahoma State, though. A true bright spot there in addition to their defense. So strictly because of the line, I'm going Oklahoma State.
I will say this real quick. Kansas State, they're going to really want to go into this game with a statement win because guess who they got next on the schedule next weekend? Oklahoma. So not exactly.
They've beaten 2 times in a row. What's the problem?
Hey, you know what? You know what? That may be a point, but
Lincoln Riley has never beaten Chris Klieman. That's all I'm saying.
Well, first time for everything, right?
Yeah, and it'll be this year. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, I definitely think, I like Deuce Vaughn, but I don't like the passing offense for Kansas State so much. Now, granted, I don't like Oklahoma State's that much either. I think this is not going to be a fun game to watch. But Shehan said the exact reason why I'm picking Oklahoma State. They're just better at home. That's really it. I don't really have a whole lot of hype for Kansas State other than Deuce Vaughn. I thought the Stanford win was impressive just because I thought Stanford's offense would look presentable as a college football team, as a Power 5 team. But yeah, I'm going with Oklahoma State. I got kind of hesitant there because Liam's taken the bet on them, and Liam, we all know, has not been super.
Whoa, my bets have been a lot better than my straight up picks.
Hey, you know what? I can say the same for me because guess what? You're calling out his bets. Guess what? For those that watch me and Liam's betting show, even though I was out last week, I am 8-3 in my betting picks over the last 2 weeks. Okay, I want that on record. I want that mentioned even before we go live again this Friday. I am 8-3. Okay, so trust me on my gambling picks for this week.
I'll trust you more than I trust Liam, so I'll go with Oklahoma State for that reason. But we want to wrap it up a little bit. Liam and Andrew, I know you guys had a couple questions for Shehan before we get out of here. I'm going to give you 2 each just because we want to get out of here. So Liam, we'll start with you. What are some of your questions for our guest?
The first thing I wanted to ask is, what advice do you have to give to young writers that are trying to make it in the sports world? Because I was one of them, and I know you probably were as well. It's definitely a grind, but what advice do you have to give?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Well, I mean, I think that the advice that obviously everybody gives but has a lot of merit to it is just right? I mean, I think that just having a portfolio, getting better at your craft, and on top of that, also being edited, that's really helpful for people because, you know what you can do, but you only get better at something by continuing to do it, right? I mean, and that's with anything, but it's also true with writing. And the other thing that I'll mention as well is that it's kind of weird and it's not necessarily a natural thing for a lot of people, but networking is such a big part of this job, right? Because you can be doing great work, but if nobody kind of knows or sees it or hears about it, right? It kind of doesn't matter. And so, for me, I've always tried to go into every meeting with someone, every relationship, just wanting to connect with somebody as a person and don't treat it as transactional, right? I mean, my first job out of college, I got it because one guy who I was friends with, who I did work with, but kind of just became friends on the side, suggested that they interview me for the job, right? And so, yes, I was qualified for the job and I was, able to do the job and all that, but it really is some of those connections that really help you get your name in the door, help people put a name to a face, that sort of thing. So try to meet as many people as you can. And again, don't be transactional with it as well.
That's really good advice. And then my other question for you was, because you did mention it earlier, was you weren't always into football, I guess. When did you first get into football and when did you start writing about it?
Yeah, so I started writing about it when I was a sophomore at Baylor back in 2013, I think it was. And so, I just joined the school newspaper for fun. I didn't really think that it was going to be much more than that. I just kind of realized I really like it and I happen to be pretty good at it. And so I kind of just kept taking it as far as it would go. And people still pay me to do this, so it can't be all bad. But for me, the time that I really got into football, the first time that I did was living in Texas back in 2005 when Vince Young and Texas went and won the national championship. It was something that was bigger than just college football. It was bigger than sports even. Like, it was just stuff that we talked about in the hallways at school because it was such a big deal, right? But it was really going to some of those games early when I was at Baylor. And one thing that Baylor does that's really cool, that really integrates people into college football there, is they have a tradition called running the line, which is basically, students, freshmen specifically, get to kind of collect on the field and run across the field before the game. And it's something that's specific to freshmen at Baylor, right? Like, nobody else is really allowed to do that at any other school. There are actually NCAA rules against it, but because Baylor's done it for so long, they let you do it. And so that was incentive to show up for every game. And then you start really getting into it and you start really getting connected with people and the crowd. And there's just nothing quite like it. So just all of that combined, I know it's a long, winding story, but all of those things kind of add up to eventually get me to where I am.
No, that's sick. I didn't know that was a Baylor exclusive. I knew they did it. I didn't know that was exclusive, so that's really cool. And just
in FBS at least, because I have been yelled at before because I said we're the only team that does it. I think that some FCS team does it, so I don't want to make them mad. Whichever team I'm forgetting, but at least in the FBS, nobody else does that.
For sure. And then just before I give Andrew his 2 questions, like, your knowledge of the game and everything is so it's sensational. Like, you really know your stuff. It was really good just learning from you tonight and all that. So, thank you for coming on and doing this, and I'll give Andrew the floor.
Yeah, appreciate it. It's better than having a real job.
True.
So there's been a lot of topics going on, I think, specifically this week. Two of the 2 ranked games of this weekend are neutral site games, Soldier Field for Wisconsin, Notre Dame, and Jerry's World AT&T Stadium in Arlington for Arkansas, Texas A&M. And it's getting very unpopular among the audience. I just want to know, what are your thoughts on these big neutral site games in the regular season? Love it, hate it, scrap it, that sort of thing.
So there are examples of this working to me, right? Like, Texas, Oklahoma should never be played anywhere but the Cotton Bowl. And I think Florida, Georgia, and Jacksonville is absolutely perfect. I don't love, though, the neutral sites that are played at an NFL stadium usually. And the other thing, too, is I don't love the neutral sites that aren't sort of consistent like that, right? And so I just think that it ends up, I would rather see this game be played at Notre Dame or at Wisconsin, right? Like, I think it would be a much more fun game if that were the case. And I think that that's true of almost any one of these games. I would have rather seen Alabama, Miami in Miami, right? I would have rather seen whichever one, right? I mean, why Stanford, Kansas State at AT&T is like the perfect example.
That one made no sense.
Hate it.
Why are you doing that?
I think it was because when they first scheduled the game, people thought that they would be better at this point than what they actually were. And let's just be honest, that failed absolutely horribly. You could have gotten into the stadium for like $15, I think, at kickoff. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. And it sucks, right? Like, I mean, that's no fun at all. And you know what? Like, hey, credit to whoever organized the game for living in the year 2012, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it probably was never going to be a big draw for a game just because these are 2 pretty niche fan bases. And so who also are just geographically somewhere completely different. That's a whole other thing. So I think that there are examples of it being done right. It usually is not in an NFL stadium. And I think the other thing too is that there has to be a real draw, because even like Baylor, Texas Tech, which was a game that I covered a lot, obviously, when I was at Baylor, that game historically was played at AT&T Stadium for several years. But it's like, can Baylor and Texas Tech really fill AT&T Stadium? Of course not, right? No. Like, it's silly. And so I think that there are individual examples, but generally I don't like them.
Okay, because go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think that was the perfect answer. Like, Red River has to play where it's played, and then I just want to say, college basketball. It's good for college basketball because college basketball neutral site environments are out of this world good. But then when you have Drake and St. Louis playing in a few months at T-Mobile Arena in Vegas, then what are you doing? There's gonna be like 17 people at that game.
Now, I will say this. So remember, the Wisconsin Notre Dame series was originally supposed to happen last year with it being in Lambeau between Wisconsin and Notre Dame. That obviously didn't happen last season. I think they moved it down to 2026. I think when they first made the scheduling, it did make sense because Green Bay, obviously, there's a lot to like about it happening in Green Bay because the Packers, they have a huge connection with Notre Dame, with the founder, Curly Lambeau, being a grad of Notre Dame. The two locations made sense, but I feel like once you actually get to the games, it's kind of like I understand the history side of it, and look, Chicago is very. If you had to ask me, like, what are the two biggest college fan bases in Chicago, it's probably gonna be either Notre Dame or Wisconsin.
Right.
I think in that aspect, okay, yeah, I feel like at this point, I think we would have preferred to see home and home rather than Lambeau.
Yeah, and something that I'll mention, right, is that I just think that NFL stadiums in general versus college stadiums, I think our NFL stadiums are built for NFL games. And one of the things that we love about college, right, is like in some cases the fans are right on top of the field, right? Like something that we love is there's great pregame type facilities, for example. There's easy access. There's a great student section that's really built there to be a student section. And with AT&T, it's built for comfort, right? I mean, that's the main NFL stadium that I've been to. It's made to sit back and watch a game. And yeah, when there are big moments, it'll get loud when there's a Cowboys game there, but like it's not made to get loud. That's not what it's built for. Whereas
exactly.
Yeah,
it's made for rich people that can afford
Right.
the season tickets, and they get mad, and these boomers get mad whenever college students go crazy. Let's just be honest, that's what
Right.
it is.
Right.
And
the Cotton Bowl, for example, is a total hellhole that nobody with any money would really want to spend time at. And because of that, everybody's packed together and it's super loud and it's great. So I think that that's a big part of it as well.
Okay, cool. And then my next question is, should something be done about the big games that happen at noon? And I'll give a couple examples. Wisconsin, Penn State happened at 11 o'clock. I honestly thought that was a joke. Oregon, Ohio. I was getting to it, Liam. Dylan, this is my question, isn't it? So Oregon, Ohio State, noon game. Doesn't make sense to me. Wisconsin, Notre Dame, noon game. This should not happen. Nebraska, Oklahoma. Look, I know Oklahoma, they were the big game favorite going into the game, but I guess for historical reasons, it just didn't really make sense to make it a noon game. Cincinnati, Indiana, also another noon game. This is one of Cincinnati's biggest games on their schedule. Why are they playing this game at noon? And I think I could go on and on about this. Also Wisconsin, Michigan, they just announced that was also going to be a noon game. Like, what are we doing here? Like, why are we playing all these big games at noon? Should we be more flexible? Because the fact that the two ranked matchups this weekend both kick off by 2:30, and none of them are at night, to me, it just does not make sense.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And I think that one of the things to mention is that this is the flip side of doing the deal with the devil for TV revenue, right? For building the sport as a national sport for TV revenue, as opposed to it kind of being like a niche sort of regional sport, right? Because the reason that they do that is obvious, right? Because Fox feels like the noon window, and not just feels like, they know the noon window is their most successful window if they build it up like that, right? And so as a fan who's going to the game, that sucks. Right. I mean, nobody wants to have to tailgate. Nobody wants to set an alarm to tailgate. That sucks. And
because that's what I was gonna say. Imagine how the Wisconsin fans in Madison, or if you're like
Right.
a college student in Notre Dame, you have to drive 2 hours to Soldier Field. What time are you even gonna start tailgating?
Totally.
Like I've been to Soldier Field, and guys, it's not an easy part of Chicago to drive through. If I was a Wisconsin fan living like in Southeast Wisconsin or Madison or like that, and if I had to think to myself, oh my God, I got to get to Soldier Field by like 8 o'clock the latest, like that's a drag. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. And it sucks. And as a fan, it sucks. And, but that's the tough part, right? Is that like, they want to not saturate their window because they don't want to be competing with the other big game and whatever, right? Like, and that sucks. And that really sucks as a fan. It really sucks as a viewer. The flip side is obviously now we get national college football, right? We can watch things on every channel. We can have things going on in every window. I wish that they didn't put so much emphasis on the noon window. I wish, but like, it's kind of my employer, CBS, at least right now, right? The 3:30 game is the big CBS game, and that's the big SEC game. And ESPN really owns that night game because of all the rights that they own. And so unfortunately, it kind of makes it, because Fox really does lag behind in those two windows because of that. It just kind of makes it happen like that, to where their biggest game happens at noon. And yeah, I mean, I think that definitely these TV companies need to look at what do people want? What do you want out of this? And I think the schools too, right? Because the schools are the ones who really ultimately, in a lot of ways, have control over this. With, are we going to re-up with this network? Are we going to accept this? Are we going to whatever, right? But again, it's kind of part of the deal with the devil that we've done in college football, to be able to make it be a national sport and nationally broadcast, and to be able to watch, Penn State versus Wisconsin in Arizona. It's just, unfortunately, it's part of the sucky stuff that comes with it.
Okay, and I know Dylan said 2 per person, but this one's going to take like 5 seconds for the answer. So you're a Texas guy, you're based in Dallas, and I assume born and raised Texas also, because you were talking about Longhorn growing up, that being the big story. You went to Baylor. I got to ask this question for everyone who has any association with the state of Texas, from there, born there, grew up, whatever. Go to order at Whataburger.
Well, I will mention I was born in Chicago, though I did move to Texas when I was 3. So that's how the Bears fan thing happened. But I've, in my entire life, I've basically been a Texan. So yeah, go to order at Whataburger. This is really tough. So when I was in college, it was the patty melt. But now that I'm like a little older, that just makes me feel terrible these days.
It's so heavy.
It's so heavy. So I've kind of moved away from that. I mean, I think that obviously when you're doing late night, like the honey butter chicken biscuit is obviously another level. So, and then as for third, I mean, I don't go as much because like I said, it makes you feel terrible after a little while. I did like the green chili burger that they had as well, that whole meal deal. And so that's probably the most recent one that I've done, but that's kind of the fun thing about Whataburger, right? Is that you can change it up all the time because they have so many options. So I'd say that my original order, though, to answer your question more, would be the patty melt.
Patty melt first, honey barbecue chicken sandwich second, and even though it's no longer on the all-time favorites, I will custom make the Monterey melt, because I don't know why they took it off, but it was one of my favorites of all time.
All the all-time favorites are so much better than everything they have on the menu. I don't know why they don't just put them on the menu.
Because they're favorites, but
Well, this has been a blast. This went a lot longer than I thought, but when you're having such a great conversation about Whataburger and Oklahoma State's playoff chances, you just have to go, So thank you, Shehan, so much for joining us and for sticking with us through the long show. And if anybody's still listening through this, thank you so much for watching on YouTube or on Spotify or on Apple. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and Apple and Spotify, whatever those are called. Follow, subscribe, whatever you can do to support us. We'll definitely appreciate it. Follow us on Twitter as well at tportalcfb, and follow each of us as well.
Follow our guest.
What's that? Oh yeah,
follow our guest. Plug your socials.
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter at Shehan Jeyarajah, spelled exactly as it sounds. But if you do need some help, it's at ShehanJeyarajah. I hope you got that.
Boom. Rewind it in case you missed it. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you with our week 4 recap next week.